Hey, what's up, Drew?
What's going on, John?
I wish I had an intro. The intros, I think I do have an intro. I'm just not.
Those podcasts about podcasts.
Oh, it's very simple. It's your pod.
What? Wait for it.
Yes. That's a banger. Oh.
It is a banger.
Well, so this is Drew Hugh. He's got a podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Oh, it's WRYAT Pirate Radio. It's a group effort with a few other people in the New Orleans community, but it's like a spoof on NPR and WWOZ. But
you have a very WWOZ voice. You're like, so it's a WWOZ.
Oh yeah, that's kind of the goal. It's definitely my cigarette smoking, I'm sure. But I do play this character on the podcast, which is like a WWOZ. Yeah, he's like Lube Guru, and it's like he tells you about like all the music lineups that you could hear on the radio, but like normally like they're so long, and like you're driving in a car, you're like, man, I can't keep this straight, and it's like it's a chance to do a bunch of like wordplay and puns with bands and music venues in this fake world, and people be like, oh, that's probably this, and it's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like Cheeky Wawas is Beefy Wee Wees.
Beefy Wee Wees.
Yeah, that wasn't my name. That was someone else in Daryl Rollo, another fellow comedian. He works on the podcast.
We're gonna get him on here one day.
Yeah, he's a good person, but like it's a group effort, and it's just like, hey, this is silly. Let's get that on.
Wait, how long have you guys been doing this podcast? How many episodes?
Well, it's we're about to wrap up our 5th season, which is about like 12 episodes this season. I'm not sure about how many years, but like definitely more than like COVID.
So like 60 episodes.
Oh man, I wish I had all the stats on it.
But something like that.
But yeah, we got like a YouTube page, and we got like on most of like Spotify or like however else you find podcasts.
Wait, how'd you guys decide to do this? Like, how did it come about?
I was just a bunch of us. I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I had a little bit more information. I just was very lucky.
Well, just from your perspective.
I know a few of these people, and I didn't work with some other people, and it was like kind of a group effort. They kind of were like throwing something around. I was trying to get some stuff done. Like besides comedy, I was like, well, I can't always do some jokes on comedy, like open mics and stuff. Some of the stuff isn't worth that 3 or 5 minutes. It's like, no, it is, but it's just not the right venue for it.
So it's like a secondary comedic outlet for you.
For me, it is. And like I used to do a lot of improv, so like that's how I know some of these people is like through like improv, and like you're working with people, and it's like, here's my idea, and then somebody's like, yeah, I like that, that's what we're going to do with it, and you're like, oh yeah, because if I wrote it, this is what would have happened. But sometimes it's like I pitch something to you, and you're like, oh, I've been thinking about that, or that makes me think of this, and then together we get to something that's way better.
And so like you guys podcast, it's sort of like a radio show. It's like a radio program, like, and I understand that it's a spoof of a radio program, but it's like a very involved endeavor. Like you guys have to plot it out, script it out, rehearse it, record it, edit it, all kinds of stuff.
At first it was kind of like, it felt like it was like haphazard, and like we were just meeting up like and doing it there. But like through COVID actually, and through like Zoom meetings, we kept like consistency, which I think is very much key for anything, in like repetitiveness, and like I like routines. And so that was helpful for me, where it's like, well, look, we're gonna meet up and call, we'll talk about this stuff, and we started planning stuff out, and we started arcing our seasons, and like what's, after a few episodes you're like, oh, okay, this is that character. Next time we bring that character up, it's we already know these things, what's something new, and you get to build the world, and it's not, I don't know. So sometimes it's just like a one-off joke, and some stuff is like, oh, that was some gold, let's bring that back.
Wow. So, like, you mentioned that you guys use Zoom to plan things. How have you guys been recording it throughout COVID?
Oh, well, at the beginning, we did do Zoom, and then, like, Daryl and Will and a few other people started editing stuff. There's so many people, and I feel bad not naming everybody. But then towards the end, we go to Brian Wildridge is another person, and we met at his house, and we started doing it like this with a real microphone, and that's what's awesome. Is you get to, I don't know, because before like you're talking through a lens, and there's a lot of like, oh, that wasn't a good take. Now it makes it a little bit easier.
So at one point, you guys were literally recording the audio through Zoom.
Yeah.
Man, that's high-tech stuff. That's amazing that we have access to this sort of thing to even record stuff like this. 20, 30 years ago, you wanted to record something and then get it out to the world. You had to be sort of famous or get a public access show. But now you can record it yourself, post it yourself.
Yeah, it's crazy how, like, like back in the day, like, you would tell me something, and I'd be like, oh, what did John try to tell me? And then I have to get home and, like, try to, like, log on to the internet, and then, like, hopefully, like, nobody called through while I was trying to remember what I was, like, trying to look for. And the thing is, now you can just send it to me on the phone. So phones, computers, and trying to use the technology and not get abused by that technology is kind of the goal, and work smarter, not harder.
And so when you were recording your stuff through Zoom, I know that you're not a big user of desktop computers or laptops. Were you using your mobile phone?
I was using my phone. Other people were using like their computer, and I guess that's great. But like that's what's nice is like this made me able to like stay connected and still be apart. I didn't have to go at least to like somebody's house because we couldn't always meet up in person. But as soon as we could, that makes it so much easier. And like we'd meet up and try to write together and then just pitch it in. But like reading in a room with someone else, all of a sudden like that energy picks back up. And I think that it's definitely shown, at least in like season 5, that like everything that we've learned has come together. And I'm looking forward to like season 6, but we're going to take a break. But season 5.
And you guys plan out the whole season at the beginning. So this is like a television show where you guys have like a script and a Bible, and it's like, okay, here's where we're trying to drive this season. Here's the overarching theme of this season.
Right, and then every season, each episode has like its kind of like own theme, but you're able to like, like for one time, like this character Loop, like I didn't know what I was gonna do for like COVID. No shows are really going on. Like, what's he gonna hey, you remember that show? It's like, no, nobody wants to hear that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, Loop's gone. We don't know where Loop is. And so we just made it like, okay, so what else is in the studio? Like, and just building that world, this fake world of New Orleans and Metairie that we live in.
Have you been on many other folks' podcasts, like besides your own podcast and this illustrious podcast?
Not really. But I have a lot of friends, and like they all seem to do something. So I try to listen to theirs. I feel bad because I probably produce a lot and then be like, hey, check it out, and then I don't do as much intake it as I really like visual stuff. I like seeing stuff with this. So like hopefully the goal with this podcast is also to do maybe some live shows. We've done one in the past, like a fake fundraiser at the Southern Rep, but man, it's like improv for me. So it's fun. It's a radio play. We get to build this world in your brain. Like also when you hear stuff, like you start imagining things, and then so also people listening maybe for the last few seasons finally come out and see a live show and they're like, whew. That's not what I thought.
Wait. So you guys have already done one live already?
We did one, and it was fun. I got to interview this, Judy Regan.
Yeah, I know her. Comedian, musician in New Orleans. Yeah.
She's an incredible lady. So it was like she played herself, and then like I got to interview her as she played a song. I've also interviewed. I had the pleasure of interviewing Thomas Jones.
All right, I love Thomas.
Right, wonderful singer, songwriter, and comedian. And he just being himself, but like for the most part we're just spoofing stuff, so it's kind of got like some real stuff in there, but a lot of it's just fake.
About how big is you guys' team? Like how many of you guys is it working on this show, like right. the main team?
Well, there's Hallie, and then there's Shannon, and then there's Mike, and then now we have another Mike, and then there's Brian, and then there's Daryl, and then Millie, and then myself, and then Brad, and I'm sure that there's like at least 3 more. So I would say like at least 12 to 13.
Wow, so this is like a real production you guys have going on here, a real team effort.
Yeah, it's much, people rise and fall. Some people have some stuff going on. They can when they can. But the main thing is Brad's like, if it's funny, it goes on. So that's been like helping me. It's like, all right, well, this is funny. And like, I kept trying to get you on. I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. You know, and I used to get so frustrated, but I was like, no, season 6.
Well, yeah, I'm such a notoriously slow writer, and I think I was slowing down the process. What was it? We were going to do Festival Fest.
Right.
And so, now there's actually a Festival Fest.
I know. And that's what's kind of fun is like, we do a thing that's like a ghost roast. And then the other day I heard Geneva Joy, you used to go roast a ghost. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing maybe. I don't want to spoil anything for the season.
Don't spoil it. Nobody listens to this podcast, so you're not really spoiling anything.
The idea of like, stuff that maybe of like it's kind of like Nutri-Ground newsy stuff too. It's like just some satire. It's just fun stuff to like spoof on your own city.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you know about that because some of your bits that you do in your stand-up routine, it's like I'm like, oh man, I've been here for 38 years, and that's so funny to me because it's like something I've thought about, especially the train.
Well, I love that I have a joke where I mention how I've been doing something for 37 years, and actually at this point I've been doing it for 40 years.
Yeah, but 37 sounds
37
great.
Is a much funnier word than 40.
Yeah, 40's biblical. Oh yeah, but yeah. So like the thing is like like right there, the more people you have though, then they'd be like, oh yeah, well here's another thing, and it's this. Like okay, just recently like we needed to fill her some time. Some stuff rises and falls. We did Fest, right? I did Vest Fest. And while I was thinking about that, and it was like Loop, the dumb DJ, just showing up at like a Proud Boy rally, and like everybody's
stupid.
Everyone exactly. But I was like, it needs to be 5 minutes, so we got to fill some 5 minutes with some silliness. But through that, we found like I was like, oh, if that's silly, then also like Leno's in a limo eating lemons would be silly, and it gave us all a chance to do our really horrible Jay Leno impression and do some fun radio plays.
Well, I try to hide the fact that pretty much everyone who's going to be on this podcast are comedians or stand-up comedians, because I only know stand-up comedians and lawyers, and the lawyers I know have shitty podcasts, so I don't want them on here. Hopefully none of them watches. But like Drew is like a wordplay master. He came in second place in our like year-long pun master tournament, where it was like, dozens of comedians went up and did their best puns. And out of all the comedians in New Orleans, Drew was number 2. I actually think he was number 1 in my heart.
I appreciate that. That was a fun thing. Sometimes I was like, oh, I wish we would do it again. But it's one of those things where like, that was kind of nice. Maybe I could tap out on that. It rhymes. Drew number 1 doesn't rhyme as much as like Drew number 2.
I never thought about that. Wait, so how do you guys go about like marketing your podcast and getting new viewers? I think you mentioned that you guys have your own Facebook page for the podcast, Twitter page for
Sharing
the podcast.
stuff's been helpful, but Will and Mike and Daryl and Brian and Brad, they kind of know a little bit more about that technology, and sure, we'll boost a post on Facebook. I'd like to share it. And I haven't really said on Facebook, like on my own Facebook, like, hey, here's the podcast I do. I'm like, hey, here's a podcast from some people that I like. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're like, hey, Drew, you do a podcast? And I was like, no. I'm like, yes, I do a podcast.
He forgot that he does a podcast.
Because it's like playing. It's not like work. And for a while, it was kind of like work during the quarantine. I was like, stuff's not working out. But I was like, oh, I like it when my brain breaks sometimes. I'm like, that's when you get your best stuff.
Wait, so you would consider yourself mostly like talent for the podcast rather than an executive?
Oh, yeah. Like, I definitely, like, here's a silly thing that won't leave my brain, and then other people go, yeah. And then sometimes they go, I don't know. And I go, let me show you what I'm thinking. And, like, like a Mr. Rogers character, but it's called, like, Mr. Lee in Araby. And it's something that I was like, well, what else would be on this radio station besides like a DJ? It's like, oh, well, let's try to do like a Fred Rogers type of stuff. We did too. It's okay. Maybe that's something that would be more live show would be wonderful to see. But it's like building that world. So each season I'm like, I want to do new characters. Sometimes we write for each other.
Yeah.
Like, Left, Right, and Kenner, which is kind of like a political show where it's like, the left and the right. And then I play this guy, Randy, Whippets, who's like an HVAC sheet metal worker. And like,
I don't even know
dude,
what
I
an
get to like,
HVAC sheet metal worker means. I don't even know what that
oh
means.
man, like, you know, they gotta like fix like your AC, man. Like they like take care of all that stuff, dude. Like, you know, if your Mima's house gets all hot and sweaty, I get to make her like house all cool again, dude. And so I get to talk like that for like 3 minutes. I'm like, that's really fun. And then people start writing, and they're like, oh, well, we know that he says Meemaw. We know he's got like, his name's Whippets. He doesn't like to be called, you know, this. So it's like you build up these characters in the world that they live in, and to me, that's really fun.
Well, so the way that my last episode with an actual guest ended was that my audio recorder ran out of battery.
Oh no!
Now,
oh, no.
no, that's not happening now. We have I would never make the same mistake twice. The issue we're having now is my video recorder. I forgot to charge the battery. I was filming stand-up last night and did not recharge the battery.
Oh.
So when you're doing a podcast, if you're doing it solo and you have equipment, no matter how good the equipment is, we have, what do you call it? Idiot error? What do you call that? ID 13 error? What do you call that?
Like a little technical error.
Yeah, we got a technical. So you want to make sure to charge your equipment,
Yeah,
not just the audio recorder,
but the video.
but also the video. Do you see that little blinking light?
Oh yeah, now that I remember
Yeah,
that the
it's
video
about to
camera's on,
die.
I'm looking at it.
So this was, I guess, episode 4 with Drew Hugh, stand-up comedian, and I'm hoping the battery doesn't die before I finish. I had to tell them the equipment I'm using. We're using the SM58 microphones like we
liked it.
always use, standard stand-up microphones. We're using the Zoom Podtrak P4 to record audio, and the Sony CX405 camcorder. It's the cheapest camcorder Sony has. I think this is my first one recording a video with this one. But yeah, this is what it looks like. We're in the dark. It's night. It's doing a good job. I think it's doing a good job. Hopefully the video comes out good. But yeah, this is the John Reynolds podcast, and we're about to roll out.
Thank you, John.
Well, let's see if they.
This is the John Reynolds podcast. Podcast about podcasts. Podcasting podcast. Podcast.
That's the John Reynolds podcast, and we're done.
Oh man, that's a good theme.
It's a banger.
It is
Say
a banger.
say
It's a banger.
That was great. I just watched Sparks documentary with my father. At the beginning, it starts with them going. It's like kind of like stringy orchestra tense music, and it goes fanfare. Intro fanfare.
I'm so mad that I didn't bring my little